In 1953, a woman in Peoria, Illinois, stood at a kitchen counter holding everything her family needed for a week without a single convenience product in sight. A pressure cooker, a hand-cranked food mill, a cast-iron skillet seasoned with 20 years of use, and a percolator that had never needed replacing. That same autumn, Swanson launched the television dinner at 98 cents a tray, and the most successful displacement campaign in American food history began. There is one idea running through every item in the countdown. The skill lives in the tool, not the package. You are going to hear that idea more than once before we are done. Nobody rang a bell when the kitchen changed for good. It happened one gadget at a time, one drawer at a time, until the room that used to ask something of your hands stopped asking anything at all. 20 of those gadgets are what we are here for today. Some you will remember the second you hear the name. Some you will not have thought about since a grandmother's kitchen. You can still smell if you close your eyes. Let's start at the bottom. Number 20 is the flip grocery list. A small strip of stamped metal with the names of common groceries already printed on it in tidy rows: milk, bread, eggs, coffee, and a row of little metal tabs beside each word. You flipped the tab down when you ran out of something and flipped it back up once it was in the cart. No pen, no paper, no app buzzing in your pocket. It was a small fixture kept close at hand in the kitchen, and it never once needed to be charged, never once lost its signal in the basement. There was something almost restful about a list that could never grow past what it already was. It disappeared quietly, not because it stopped working, but because the number of things worth buying got too long for 12 rows on a strip of tin. Number 19 is the wall-mounted coffee grinder, fixed permanently in place like it belonged there, because it did. You turned the little handle, felt the beans give way in stages, and caught the grounds in a small drawer underneath. Some had a dial so you could choose a coarser or finer grind, depending on what pot you were using that morning. You could smell the beans before you even touched the crank, and the smell only got stronger with every turn, filling the whole kitchen before a single drop of water had even boiled. It gave way to the pre-ground bag, and then to the pod. And now, most people under 40 have never smelled coffee beans breaking open one crank at a time. Number 18 is the hand-cranked flour sifter. A squeak-squeak rhythm over a mixing bowl, working the flour through a fine wire mesh so your cakes rose lighter and your biscuits came out soft instead of dense. You remember the particular resistance in your wrist on the third or fourth crank, when the flour started to pack down. Pre-sifted bags of flour and one-touch electric mixers made the whole motion unnecessary, and the sifter went the way of the washboard. Number 17 is the manual meat grinder, clamped firmly to the counter. A hand crank turning blades that pushed cuts of meat through and out the other side in long ribbons. It took real arm strength, not a gentle turn, but a steady, grinding push. And you knew the grinder was working because you could feel it working all the way up through your shoulder. Whoever turned the crank knew exactly what went into that meatloaf because they had made it appear with their own two hands. The butcher counter, and later the pre-ground package in the refrigerated case, made that particular kind of labor optional, and most people simply stopped choosing it. Number 16 is the wall-mounted can opener. You remember the specific click of it folding out from the wall, the way the can locked into the jaw, and the low whir of the cutting wheel turning against the rim. It folded flat again when you were done, so it never stuck out into the room. It was built for leverage, for the big, stubborn cans that a handheld opener would have fought you on. The countertop electric opener eventually took its place, and then the drawer took the electric opener's place too. Number 15 is the nut grinder, a small jar fitted with a clamp and a crank on top. You tossed in a handful of walnuts or pecans, turned the handle, and out came a fine, even chop for a banana split or a date and nut loaf without ever touching a knife. It seemed almost like magic that a machine so small and simple could do a job so exactly right every time. Pre-chopped bags in the baking aisle made the little grinder redundant, and it slid into the back of the cupboard. Number 14 is the rotary egg beater, patented back in 1884 and still standing on every counter 70 years later. You remember the specific ache in your forearm, halfway through whipping egg whites for a meringue, the way the wire loops churned the bowl into froth, faster and faster the harder you cranked. Before the electric hand mixer became affordable to nearly everyone, this was simply how a kitchen made something light out of something liquid. The refrain returns again quietly underneath this one because nobody rang a bell. The egg beater just started showing up less year by year until it was decor instead of equipment. Number 13 is the cherry pitter. One press of the lever, one small spike driving straight through the fruit, and the pit dropped clean away in less than a second. It made cherry pie season something you could actually get through in an afternoon instead of a full evening at the table with a paring knife and stained fingers. Your fingers stained by the end of a bowlful. The frozen, pre-pitted bag in today's grocery freezer does the same job with none of the ritual, and none of the small satisfaction of watching the lever do exactly what it promised every single time. Number 12 is the wire egg slicer, a hinged little cradle that held a hard-boiled egg in place while a row of thin wires dropped straight through it, producing perfectly even slices for a deviled egg platter or a green salad. You remember the give of the wires, the small resistance, and then release, cutting through white and yolk. In one motion, a knife could never quite match. Deviled eggs used to be the centerpiece of a party table. Now half the people at that same party would not recognize the tool that used to make them. Number 11 is the Foley food mill, sometimes called the Foley fork, a simple hand tool that was somehow a masher, a whisk, and a spatula all at once. It mashed potatoes smooth, folded batter gently, and scraped a bowl clean, and one good one lasted a whole marriage. The wooden handle worn smooth by hand after hand after hand. Julia Child kept one in her own kitchen long after fancier tools existed, because some tools earn their place and never lose it. Today, that single job is split across 4 or 5 different plastic gadgets, each doing its own narrow piece of what the Foley fork once did alone. Here is the midpoint breath, because it is worth sitting in for just a second. Half these tools are just gone, and nobody remembers actually deciding that. No vote was taken, and no announcement was made. One year the drawer had a food mill in it, and some year later it simply did not. Number 10 is the gravy separator, a small pitcher with a spout set low at the bottom so you could pour off the rich, dark liquid while the layer of fat stayed behind, rising and pooling the way it always did if you watched it long enough. It turned a Sunday roast's drippings into something you could actually serve at the table without embarrassment. A jar of gravy from the store shelf replaced it, and with it went the small ceremony of standing over the stove, waiting for the fat to separate on its own time. Number 9 is the butter curler, a thin blade with ridges along its edge, dragged across a stick of cold butter to leave behind a small ribboned curl you could set on a bread plate like it belonged in a magazine. Presenting butter used to be its own small art form at a dinner table. The pre-cut stick straight from the refrigerator door replaced the whole idea that butter needed presenting at all. Number 8 is the stovetop percolator, sitting on the stove like it had a permanent reservation there. You remember the little knob on top, the way you would lean down and watch the coffee darken with each cycle, until the color told you it was ready. It was almost ceremonial, standing there watching your own coffee become itself. The whole kitchen slowly filling with that smell while the rest of the house was still asleep. The drip machine replaced it, and the pod replaced the drip machine. And now, most people press one button and never see the coffee change at all. Number 7 is the manual ice crusher, a crank-driven machine that turned whole ice cubes into fine, even shards for a party or a batch of snow cones. You remember the specific crunch, crunch, crunch of the crank working through the gears, a sound that meant company was over and the good glasses were out. The freezer door's crushed ice button replaced it, silent and instant, and the party sound disappeared along with the tool that made it. Number 6 is the cookie press, sometimes called the cookie gun. You filled the tube with dough, fit a patterned disc onto the end, and squeezed the trigger to shape a spritz cookie onto the baking sheet, one after another after another. It mostly came out once a year, right around the holidays, and the click of switching to a new shape disc was half the fun of using it at all. Store-bought holiday cookies from the bakery case replaced the ritual, and a lot of family recipes for spritz cookies simply stopped getting passed down. Number 5 is the Jell-O mold. Shaped in decorative molds filled with a wobbling, jewel-colored gelatin salad that took real patience and a very steady hand to turn out onto a good serving plate without collapsing. When it worked, it was a small piece of theater in the middle of the table, guests leaning in to see what shape it would hold. A small held breath before the mold came free, and the whole thing stood there, wobbling but intact. When it did not work, it collapsed right there in front of everyone. And somehow, that was part of the charm, too. This one was not replaced by anything. The whole ritual simply stopped, and an entire category of the American dinner table quietly closed its doors. Number 4 is the top-loading dishwasher. You remember lifting the lid straight up instead of swinging a door open, loading the dishes down into a tub the way you would load a trunk. It felt modern at the time, genuinely futuristic. A machine doing work your mother's mother never had a machine for. The front-loading design eventually became the standard everywhere, and the top loader became one of those shapes that instantly tells you what decade a kitchen photograph is from. Number 3 is the Toastmaster pop-up toaster. Sleek, rounded, a little Art Deco, built with a kind of confidence that a lot of appliances today do not bother with anymore. It ended an era of watching bread carefully, so it would not burn. The POP, when it finally came, was the whole point. Toasters today do almost exactly the same job, in almost exactly the same amount of time, which is its own small proof that the Toastmaster's designers already got it right the first time. Number 2 is the stovetop mocha pot. You remember the gurgle before the first cup, the smell filling the whole kitchen before anyone had even poured anything, the specific patience of standing near the stove waiting for that sound to change. Here is the strange part. This one never actually left. It still exists, still works exactly the way it always did, and most kitchens in America still do not have one. Not every gadget on this list disappeared because something better came along. Some of them are just quietly still here, waiting. Number 1 is the Sunbeam Mixmaster. streamlined in design with oversized twin beaters that worked the whole rim of the bowl instead of just churning the center like cheaper machines did. It showed up in almost every kitchen through the decade, whipping waffle batter and mashed potatoes and cake mix with the same steady hum. It was built the way a lot of things were built then, solid enough that some of them are still spinning today, 70 years later, in someone's grandmother's kitchen, doing the exact same job it always did. And that is the whole list. 20 tools, 20 small rituals, and every single one of them asked something of the person standing at the counter. A turn of a crank, a press of a lever, a few minutes of watching and waiting while something changed right in front of you. Here is the thing nobody tells you about convenience. It does not arrive all at once, with a headline and a ribbon cutting. It arrives one gadget at a time, one Thanksgiving's worth of leftover turkey turned into a 98-cent tray. One drawer at a time, quietly emptied out and never refilled. The skill lived in the tool, not the package, and piece by piece, the tools left the kitchen. Nobody rang a bell when it happened. Nobody voted on it. It simply got a little easier, and a little easier again, until the room that used to ask something of your hands stopped asking anything at all. That is not a complaint, not really. Convenience gave people back their evenings, their Saturdays, their time, and nobody sane would trade that back wholesale. But something real went with it. Something you cannot quite put your finger on until you are standing in front of a nut grinder in an antique shop, 70 years old, still perfectly capable of doing its one small job, waiting for a hand that knows what to do with it, and probably waiting a long while yet. You were not foolish for missing any of this. The kitchen you grew up in, or the one your grandmother stood in, was real, and it was good, and the things it asked of your hands were not a burden. They were just what a Tuesday looked like. If you are still here at the end of this list, you already know that. So tell us, out of everything you just heard, what's the one gadget from your grandmother's kitchen you'd give anything to hold in your hands one more time?